Hello, everyone. Today we're going to learn how to make a couple of very common graphs using Excel software. These spreadsheets are data taken from our textbook, Practice of Statistics in the Life Sciences. And this first graph, we have a tab on our data for a bar chart or a column chart. This is where we're going to show data that has been collected that is categorical. That means we have different types of things that can happen. And in this case, we're interested in how many times they happened comparing to different groups. So we actually have two types of categories we're putting the data into. This is a very, very easy graph to make in Excel. And it's important that we highlight the data table with words labeling our categories in both directions, and that we have a little blank cell at that top left-hand corner of our data table. So all we need to do and make a lovely graph is go to Insert, and then we're going to do a column or bar chart. We click on the little down arrow, it will give us options. And what we want to do is show this side by side or clustered column graph. The reason that is the right kind of graph to make is because we want to compare America versus Europe. So we want to see what proportions they have from side to side. So the first thing I did to make this graph look nicer is to delete the title because it's extraneous. I'm going to move the legend. So this legend is important on this graph because it's telling us the difference between America and Europe, which we definitely want to have labeled. We want to know what those two different colored bars mean. I like to have the legend over on the right-hand side. So we're going to highlight the legend by clicking on it. And then when we right-click and select Format Legend, we can move the legend position. I like to have it over here on the right-hand side because it's easier to find and see. So we have a couple more things to fix on this graph. We want to have an x-axis label. So we have these tick marks or the identification of what the columns are of, but we want to say, what are all of these things taken together? What is this variable that I am evaluating in general? So we're going to go up to the top left to add chart element, and we need to add an axis title. We're going to add the primary horizontal, and this is going to be cause of death. So all of these are different ways that people have died. And then we need to do the same thing on our vertical axis or our y-axis. And these, I think, are same thing. So we're going to go back to axis titles, primary vertical. It's going to give us a chance. Now, if we just start typing, that's going to work as well. We don't have to highlight that word axis title. So this is going to be number in thousands. And when we were typing, you could see what I was typing in this little window up at the very top. So that shows you what you're doing at that exact moment. Now the colors on our graph, we want to change those because if we print this out on a black and white printer, this blue color and this red color are going to look really similar in tone, and we aren't going to be able to see the colors very clearly. So we want to click back onto the graph. We won't be able to make any changes up here unless we're actually clicked on the graph. So see how it's got the little white circles around. And now we have this chance to change colors. We can click on this drop-down menu. I like to change it to monochromatic, and it will have a darker gray versus a lighter gray. You can also click on a data series, right? So now I can see that it's highlighting this whole set of bars. And if we right click, then we have a choice to change the color of the fill. And so we can also do it this way, right? We can pick out gray or black or whatever, right? Or a set of colors that we prefer. All right, there we go. So highlight our data table and it will make our side-by-side comparison bar chart for us. All right, that one's pretty easy. Let's go to this graph called a time plot. Oops, gave the story away there. And here we have a year and then we have a time. And these are times that it took for people to run marathons, the Boston Marathon. And then we have the year. So there's one winning time for each year. And these data are a little weird to try and graph in Excel because we want to put this value along the x-axis of year. And these data are ordinal. So remember, that's the funny kind of data that looks like numbers, but they act like they are a categorical variable. So we have to trick Excel into making the right kind of graph for us. Now I'm going to highlight all the data, both the left-hand and the right-hand column. So both our x-axis value and our y-axis value. And I'm going to go up to insert. And for charts, I'm going to pick this line or area. I'm going to pick this scatter plots, right? Now, the graph we're making isn't really a scatter plot, but in order to make Excel make it look right, we're going to use this type of graph. So what we're going to do is scatter, but with the dots connected, which is not a scatter plot, but that's what Excel does. And remember, we are going to make Excel do what we want it to, and this is how we're going to do it. All right, so we're going to use scatter plot if we want to make a plot like this, where we're showing a trend happening over time, and we want the things put onto our x-axis in order. So just like we did on our first graph, we are going to need to add afterwards an x-axis label and a y-axis label. So let's do that. Axis label, primary horizontal. This is going to be year. Here. And then add chart element again, axis titles, primary vertical. This is going to be winning marathon time in minutes. All right. Now, again, this chart title, that it's extraneous. We have these blue dots. Blue is a lovely color. I'm going to change it to monochromatic. There we go. Now we have a lot of white space on this graph. This is a waste of paper. So we want to zoom in a little bit to this time range, and we're going to do that by telling Excel to cut off part of our y-axis. So once we've already decided to do some formatting on our graph, we may have this format window up on the right-hand side, but I'm going to close it in case you don't have it up there anymore and show you how to get it. Now, what we want to do in order to sort of chop off some of this white area on the graph. So look at the range of values we actually want it to show. It goes up to 200. Let's cut it off about 120 here, because that's going to capture all of our values. And we want to hover our cursor over the graph so it says that we're highlighting the vertical value axis. We don't want the chart area. We need to like wiggle and hover and click on it when we get it to say vertical axis. Oh, that's just the title. Don't want that. All right, now we have this axis. Now we're going to do right click and format axis, and we get that menu up again. So once we have this format menu up on the right-hand side, we can let it stay up. As we click on different things on the graph, for example, if we clicked on the data series, we see that our formatting menu changes to format data series, and we have different options over here. And let's go back to the Y value axis. So what we want to do is we want to cut off the value to get rid of all this white space. It's not wrong how it is, but it'll look nicer if we do that. Notice on the format axis that it has several different options. It's got the paint can, that is strictly speaking aesthetics. Usually don't need to use that. The pentagon is effects, almost never use that. Size and properties, almost never use that, but we are going to do this one that it shows the graph. All right, so these are the sort of the graph options. Now our axis options, the bounds is what we're looking at. So see where it says minimum 0, maximum 200. And these are automatically set. It says that over here, we can just say, I want it instead manually and type that in. And when we click enter, it chops our graph off at the 120 minutes. So we can see more of the detail of what's happening on this graph over time. Right? Remember when you're looking at this graph that as a time gets shorter, that means people ran the race faster. All right, that is our time plot, which is a graph that's going to show whether there's a trend in something as we go through the years. And our last graph today is going to be a line graph. And it's a little different than the bar chart or the time plot because we first have to make some calculations. This is going to be a graph that is very common that we're going to show when we have data where we have different treatments or different groups and we want to compare them to one another. We did an experiment or an observational study and we had trees in this case that were in group 1, group 2, and group 3. And there's something different about each of those groups. And we want to measure something about the tree and we want to compare the groups. We want to compare the mean of the different groups. And so we're going to make a little data table. We're going to find the mean and we're going to find the standard deviation for each of our groups. And we aren't going to label, for this case, we'll label them group 1, group 2, and group 3. If we know what is true about those groups, then we would want to put that as these labels. Now we can't just do 1, 2, and 3. Excel won't accept these as axis labels for a line graph. So we have to have a word in the top of our little data table here. All right, so we have to put words in these squares. Now I'm going to find the mean of my group 1 trees. And this is diameter at breast height, which is a very common way of measuring trees. And I'm going to find this by typing in equals average, which is a function in Excel. And then I'm going to type a parenthesis. I'm going to highlight all of my number 1 group value data cells, do a close parenthesis. And when I click enter, it'll give me the mean. Standard deviation, I'm going to say equals ST DEV dot S, which is for sample, P is for population, which we never have. So the STDEV dot S, I'm going to type a parenthesis, I'm going to highlight the same data. Close parenthesis and hit enter. I'm going to do the same thing for group 2, equals average left parenthesis, highlight my cells, make sure I get them all, get all the right ones, close parenthesis, enter, equals ST DEV dot S, parenthesis, highlight the same data cells, close parenthesis, hit enter. If you know or prefer, you can also type in the range of the cells, this B14 colon B25. You don't have to highlight with the mouse if that's awkward on the computer you're using. So I could do average and parenthesis, and then I could scroll down here, I could look, I could say, okay, that is in column B, cells 26 to 34. So I could type in B, what was it, 26 colon B34. We'll double check that's right. 26 to 34. All right, and it doesn't have to be a capital letter. You can just type a little b. Same thing with my standard deviation. B26 colon B34. And when I click on that cell, it'll highlight the cells that are included. Oops. When I click on that cell, all right, it's giving me this little exclamation point, and I'm going to clear it. It says formula omits adjacent cells. Yeah, I want it to do that. I'm going to ignore this error. Right now, when I click on the cell and I click up into this box at the top that shows me what's in that cell, it'll highlight the cells in my data table so I can double check and make sure that I got all the right ones and none of the wrong ones included in my range. All right. I'm going to fix this error again or tell it to ignore it. Now I have numerical values. I have the mean of my groups. And I want to make a graph that shows these means. So first I'm going to make a graph that shows the means. What am I going to do with my standard deviations? I'm going to add them second. So there's 2 steps to making a graph with a mean and then error bars around it. I'm going to insert, and I'm going to insert, I said, and then I'm going to choose line graph, this one with the dots, insert line or area chart, and I'm going to pick the one that has line with markers. So Excel calls these little dots that it's going to put on there markers, and I want to have them show. I want there to be a dot on my graph because otherwise they won't show. All right, so I highlighted the labels for my groups, group 1, group 2, group 3, and I have to do that to get them put onto my graph. So I have to have them typed into my little data table ahead of time. All right, it's going to put mean on here as the chart title. I don't want that there. I need axis labels. I don't know why Excel doesn't put axis labels on the graph. We have a primary horizontal axis that we want, and I'm going to call it tree history group. I'm going to add a chart element again, axis titles, primary vertical, and I'm going to type, what is this, tree diameter at rest height in centimeters. All right, now what I want to do is add my error bars onto my graph. I have to already have my standard deviations calculated, and I have them in this little data table where they're next to my means. They're in the same pattern, right? So as I scroll across my means, 1, 2, 3 from left to right, I have my standard deviations in the same pattern, 1, 2, 3 from left to right. The way Excel is going to know where to put these standard deviations is based on that pattern. All right, so now I'm going to add another chart element. I'm going to add error bars, and it isn't going to do it right unless I go to these more error bar options. All right, it's going to stick something on there that's wrong. I'm going to go fix it like we do with everything in Excel. I have to click on this graph icon. I don't want the floofy things where I can change the color of the line. I want the serious things about the graph. All right, now I want to have both error bars in up and down direction. I like to have a cap on them that makes them easier to see. And I want to tell Excel what I want to use for those error bars. So I'm going to click on custom and specify value. And it's going to give me this little dialog box. So the positive error value is the one where I want the error bar going up. So I'm going to delete this equals bracket 1 bracket thing that it sticks in here. And I'm just going to highlight the cells in my table for the standard deviation from left to right, just like my data are. And I'm going to do the same thing in the negative error value. I'm going to delete the =1 bracket thingy and highlight my 3 values. All right, so it's telling me what I've put in there are these cells F6 to H6 on my line graph worksheet. And when I click OK, it will add them to my graph. Thank you, Excel. Right, now we want to take a quick look at them and make sure that they're the right error bars. So the middle one, they're not that different. The middle one should be a little smaller than, say, the right-hand one. We can kind of eyeball that. Right, they shouldn't all be the same. So you can do a quick eyeball check, right? Did it put your correct mean on the graph? Did it put the correct error bars? If it didn't do it right, sometimes it gets goofed up. You can just click on the error bars until you get them, and then just click delete and try it again. Sometimes it goofs them up. All right, one more thing we're going to fix on our graph. This line that is connecting my means together, we don't necessarily want that actual line present. It's connecting them together. And if we only have one set of means on here, there's only one kind of group. We don't necessarily want that line on there. So we can make this. So once we have that clicked on, we're going to format the data series. We can say no line, and it will get rid of it. That makes our graph a little cleaner. We also have these little blue dots. We want to make those dots. Those dots are our markers. So again, we're going to format data series. We're going to go to markers. And the color it's showing is blue. We don't want the blue. We want the black, nice and dark and easy to see. And I'm going to make them a little bigger just because they're easier to see. All right. So those are our a little easier to see markers, nice, clear. We don't need the line. It's not wrong with the line when we do if we had 2 different kinds of trees, 2 different species of trees, say, and we had a group 1, 2, 3, and we had means on these same 3 plots, and we had a different species of trees, we would want to keep the lines, right? Because then we could tell the difference between those 2 different kinds of trees. We'd have different colors or different markers that we'd use, and we'd have a legend out to the side telling us which one was which. All right, so this is I'm going to make these markers. I'm going to give them a fill, the fill. I want them to have a solid fill that is also black. Look a little goofy with their empty middles. Okay, there we go. That's a very nice